welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. Little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
UFC 293. Let's get into it. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. Twitter and Instagram, X at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, MattAllenFNP. The chat's getting busy.
What's
no
up,
one
everyone?
really. Wayne Kerr, Starsmith 77 Porter, Dan Hip, MMA Millionaire, Rumble B. Bub Collins and Matt. Kicks good, hanging out over there in the chat. What do you prefer, the SVT Ford F-150 or the Dodge Rumble B, Matt? Which would it be?
I don't know enough about either. I remember our dad had a Dodge Ram, though, so I'll say that.
I'm a Ford guy, but Matt, when we do have a look at the card coming up today, some big-time fights. You know that main event, Israel Adesanya taking on Sean Strickland. There's more juice to be squeezed out of a fight between 185-pound champ Israel Adesanya and former Ryzen champ Manel Kape than there is any other fight that's on this card, but we won't be getting that. However, we do get a big-time title fight in this main event. And you guys, we threw it on over to you in the community tab, and you picked your possible fight of the night. We have a lot of people to vote in those community tab polls. Matt, this
Of course.
is the fight that they picked. Tuivasa taking on Alexander Volkov. Main is for a title, co-main event for bragging rights at 265. And I know you're excited about this one.
This is one of those dumb fights where is the winner going to go on and fight for the title? Probably not, right? Like, we know how good Tai Tuivasa is, and we know how good Alexander Volkov is. They're just really talented fighters that probably are always going to come a step shy of fighting for the title, but they're both really fun fighters to go out there and watch. They both have things that make them unique. Tai, of course, with his crazy athleticism for the size of him, and his really good hand speed, and Alexander Volkov has phenomenal cardio and output for being his size as well, so I think it's a fun fight between heavyweights that are very easily distinguishable by their skills.
And, you saw a lot of the preamble for Tai Tuivasa getting in good shape, working out with the boys in Australia, and then you see him come in and he weighed 265.6 at weigh-in day. But I know, again, people excited about that. People are also excited. This was the second pick in the fight of the night screen. Jack Jenkins taking on Chepe Mariscal. Mariscal had a wild fight against Trevor Peek, who's going to be taking on a debuting fighter in October. I saw that one's announced by Big Marcel there today. Branch above, tuning in, having a good day. Wondering what the hat is. What's the hat?
Should have John Deere.
John Deere green on a hot summer night. Matt, when we look at this fight, though, you got the leg kicks, the takedowns out of Jack Jenkins, good ground and pound, heavy on top. Chepe Mariscal, whirling dervish wherever the fight goes, and I know you like this one.
And two fighters that have a lot to prove, too, right? They're both pretty young in their UFC careers, this, of course, only being the sophomore outing for Mariscal. But at 30 years old, both fighters are very promising, have a lot of talent, so it's a really big stepping stone for either guy. This would be a massive win to have on either's resume. This would definitely be the biggest win on either guy's resume, so I think it should be a fun fight, because if either one can really differentiate themselves and push forward, maybe get a stoppage and look really impressive while they do it, they could get one of those aging vets in their next time out, and those are always the big fights that really jump you up in the rankings.
And it is one of those big-time fights at 145 pounds. Matt, when we do look at this card, we did have a big weight miss, and I'm going to talk about that one quite a bit because the coach of that team doesn't like weight missers. So I'll throw a quote out there. But Matt, we start the card off with question mark kicks, and we start it with France's Kevin Jousset out of City Kickboxing taking on SBG Ireland's own Kiefer Crosby.
Oh,
Let
I
us know
love
who
them.
you have over there in the chat. Matt, I think Jiminy Glick would be all about
would be.
a Kiefer Crosby fight. For BDK, the last 2 matches in 2023. He knocks out Alex Oliveira in the first round of a mixed martial arts fight. And back in July, he beat Geordie Shore star Aaron Chalmers in a boxing match. And he looked pretty good. I saw him eat a lot of shots, but he was able to get out on the winning side of that. That wasn't too long ago. And when you go back and you watch Kiefer Crosby fights, whether it was with Bama, whether it's with Bellator, and his step down from 170 down to 155, Kiefer Crosby does pretty well the same thing throughout. Marches forward, throws big power shots, has decent conditioning and cardio as these fights go on, and if he's able to go out there and start to strike with his opponents, he might give up a little bit of defense for more offense, but by and large, you see the record there, we're not making the UFC with a losing record. And when you look at a guy like Kevin Jousset, I've seen him get dropped by lesser opponents. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't say Kit Campbell's a lesser opponent, but on the regional scene, last fight out there, Kevin Jousset, first round he gets dropped, second round he gets kind of beaten to the punch, third round he rallies back, he gets kind of on top, he's able to get kind of that whizzer arm position, and he's going out there landing some big shots, and he wins the fight against Campbell. You look at the 2 losses though, a split decision loss that could have gone either way, even though the judges didn't really think so, and a second round TKO loss at the end of the round 2, Jack Della Maddalena, that made it to the UFC. So Branch Above saying, I like Crosby in this one. Let's go Ireland. We've also got Rumble B trying to go out there and have some fun. Michael B. Gambling, Chuck Buffalo. We don't use that word, and that guy's been banished from the MMA community. And MMA Millionaire saying Jousset by decision. So, Matt, when you do look at a fight like this, we know the judoka background and the national team member that is Kevin Jousset. We know the big hooks and the forward motion of a guy like Kiefer Crosby. I think this is a fun fight while it lasts, but it's going to be, how can Jousset's chin handle up to a guy that fights like Mike Perry? And how can a guy like Mike Perry kind of deal with the possible takedowns out of a guy like Jousset?
I think Kiefer Crosby's going to eat some damage on his way in. Yes, he does do a good job on the feet offensively, and if you just look at kind of the flashes of him having his own success, yes, those hooks do look devastating, but the thing is, he does not really gauge himself all that well with his distance management, and I could see him getting caught by some shots up the middle. If he is going out there, and like you said, most of his fights follow the exact same script. It's a lot of those big hooks from the outside, trying to close the distance. He does have good top pressure when he's able to use it in some of his fights. He will jump to the back sometimes. He has great ground and pound too, exactly. But I just think Jousset's going to be a little bit cleaner on the outside with some of his technique, and that's why I have him in the matchup. This is a fun fight, I think, as a card opener, but even the winner of this, I gotta be honest, I don't know if they're going to go on and beat Jeff Neal anytime soon.
I don't have the strongest feelings on this fight because I see a lot of people saying Crosby this, Crosby that. And when you're talking about reach in this fight, step and park, the trouble is Kevin Jousset might have the reach, but he doesn't throw much of a jab in his fights. He also holds his arms out to block punches, and he cranes his head back. So it really is troubling. If you do like a guy like Crosby, maybe this is the matchup. I know at Fight Night Picks, we throw these out there in the Instagram story every single week, and 63% of the fans going with Jousset to get the win. I'm going to go with Jousset in this one, but yeah, it really is a tough one, and he very well could get touched up a little bit. Matt, if you miss weight, it's cheating. It's like steroids. Eugene Behrman back in 2020 talking about
something a guy said 3 years ago.
Talking about Shane Young when he fought Ludwig Klein, and Ludwig Klein had missed the weight. Now all of a sudden, Matt, we get the man himself. Shane Young comes in 149 3/4 pounds to take on Gabriel Miranda. So when you do consider a fight like this, Shane Young drastically over the featherweight limit. But when we do think about this in the grand scheme of things, that's why I wore a Winnipeg Jets jersey. Not just any Winnipeg Jets jersey, a Mark Scheifele jersey, because I don't know what's going to happen to Mark Scheifele this year. They might trade him, they might extend him, he might leave as a free agent. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight anymore. Shane Young missed weight by a ton. Why? I don't know. I really don't. So for me, I now all of a sudden have a really hard time on this one.
I still have Shane Young, but I don't like the weight miss. Neither one of these guys is a world beater, and I think that's what makes my opinion not change as much as it might otherwise.
You got to say this off the hop. People are going to go out there and they're going to, wow, when people miss weight, they win all the time. People who miss weight in 2023...
That was the conversation for 6 months, 1 year.
In the UFC, are 8-13, and the last two that missed weight were on the Luque versus Dos Anjos card. Josh Frem missed weight, got a win. Tafon Chukwe missed weight, and he lost. So 8-13 are the results in the UFC this year.
That was a big talking point when Darren Till beat Wonderboy years ago, and it's not a deal. I haven't heard anybody say that in a very long time, so I don't think that's an argument you got to worry about. I still like Shane Young in this matchup because Gabriel Miranda's best wins are over guys that are like 1-0, 0-1, and that's what does concern me about Miranda. When you look at how he's able to beat that level of opposition, it still is really impressive, don't get me wrong. The submissions are nice, he's able to chain things together, and he goes for a very high variety of submissions. I just hate the fact that I'm still asking, hey, what can you really go out there and show me against a decent level of competition when he's already, 16-6? Like, that's a lot of professional fights to have at this stage for me to still have so many question marks surrounding you and your style. And yes, if I just wanted to take the positives away from some of those regional fights, then I could paint you a really nice picture of how good Gabriel Miranda is, and especially once it hits the mat. I just think he's really going to struggle in some of the striking exchanges with a guy like Shane Young. And yes, I hate the fact that Young missed weight, and yes, I hate that he missed weight by so much. 4 pounds is not a small... Like, half a pound, you're still missing weight by too much. So 4 pounds, come on, what are we doing here, guys? But I still think Young's going to have more success on the feet, and I think that's what this fight's going to come down to.
We had a super chat from Dan Hip earlier on. Much appreciated there. Vince Carter 15's been trying to get into the comments all day saying that it's conditioning, not cardio. Vince Carter, bud, get out of the chat, pal. Matt,
thank you for the super chat.
Focus in on this fight. Yeah, I mean, it is a tricky one when you toss it up. And the Fight Night Picks fans, they have Gabriel Miranda in this fight to the tune of 59% going with Miranda. Johannes Freitas saying Miranda submission round 2. If it's me, I mean, if you think that Gabriel Miranda's going to get it done, I would think he could get it done early in this matchup. Shane Young, you can wear on him with some of the wrestling. We saw that his last time out against Blake Builder. And when you look at a guy like Gabriel Miranda, kind of early on having a lot of success in Brazil, regional scene, fighting with Brave a little bit, it was kind of 50-50. Goes back on the regional scene, dust guys whose records are flagged on Tapology. Comes into the UFC on short notice. You can be an apologist because he fought up a weight class and he loses to Benoit Saint-Denis. He got dropped 3 times. His striking defense was poor. He was training with Daniel Valverde and the crew at MMA Masters. So Miranda goes back to Brazil for this camp. He's training out of Astra Fight Team. There are bigger names there. Tyler Santos not one of them anymore. The relationship, it has gone.
I'd love to meet these Miranda apologists that you're speaking with and communicating with.
To me, I'll go with Shane Young. I'll keep the pick and I won't overthink it too much. But again, weight missers this year, they're not on the best of records, I guess, at 8-13. So Matt, when you do look at a fight like this, Affair is saying Young should move up. Just a second. This guy's lost 3 fights in a row. If he loses again, he's going to be fighting for Hex or Eternal. He's not fighting in the UFC
anybody
anymore.
thinks he's going to fight for the UFC anymore if he loses.
Well, Matt, we move into Chuck Buffalo, and he's taking on Mike Mathitha. And listen, they called him Mike Diamond on the UFC.com website. Topology's gone back to Mike Mathitha. So Blood Diamond, when you're 3-0, you can go with that, but now you can't. We gave the guy his props with the nickname, name, whatever you want to call it. But Matt, this is an interesting one where you have the former pro kickboxer with a shiny record over there. What was it? 52 wins, 17 by knockout. And for Chuck Buffalo, that's one of those guys where he's I was going to say a coach. He's a coach, but an owner of a jiu-jitsu gym. He's the head guy there. Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. 7-3. Maybe not a ton of great submission wins on his record. He's continued to get better. He's 4-0 so far in his career at 170 pounds. Started it off at lightweight. So when you look at a fight like this, I'm eager to see what we get out of it. Because for Charlie Radtke, we touched on it in the first fight of the night. Jousset, he's got good takedowns if he's able to get it up against the fence and into his own terms. Not at open space. Charlie Radtke's one of those guys, likes to strike for a little bit too long for maybe my liking, for everybody's liking, especially if you're picking him to win. Striking defense, not that good. Leads with his chin out, and he also just walks in on straight lines to where Blood Diamond has a good opportunity with the striking, be it counter-striking or offensively moving forward. Chuck Buffalo, we've seen him chinned in previous fights. And then for Mr. Buffalo as well, not so active with his takedown. So for me, I do like Charlie Radtke in the fight, all that being said. But Blood Diamond at 3-2 has an opportunity to win a fight. It's just, to me, if Kosi can win a first round and somehow sloppily win a third round, I think Charlie Radtke can do the same.
If Blood Diamond loses, could he fight Chick Magnet Punk, perhaps? A new free agent?
Free agent.
Exactly. That could be a fun matchup. I have Radtke in this one because I just don't think we've seen enough of Blood Diamond outside of the thing he does super well. And yes, his striking at range, he's very talented with it. And like you said, Radtke leaves enough openings and has enough holes in his game to where everything Blood Diamond does do well and excels at, he could be able to pull that off in this matchup too. I just don't think he's going to be able to sustain it long enough. We saw it in the Kosi fight. His cardio just wasn't phenomenal, and that's the thing. If he did have like solid 3-round cardio to where, okay, I'm convinced that if the fight's on his terms for 15 solid minutes and he's not able to get the knockout, he's still going to be fighting at pretty much the same pace in the third round that he is in the first, then okay, I might be more convinced to take him in this matchup, but I think he's going to be defending some takedowns, which is going to burn those cardio systems even more, and for those reasons, I got Chuck Buffalo, and that's an even better nickname than Blood Diamond.
It's one of the better nicknames that's out there. 65% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Charlie Radtke to get the win in this matchup, but again, he is a big favorite, and you have a fair amount of underdogs winning every week. The other thing, last week you didn't. There were a lot of the favorites that did win, but when you look at this one, Radtke is about a 2.5 favorite over One Blood Diamond. So both of us going with Charlie Radtke in this matchup. Rumble B saying, let's go Chuck Buff. I don't even think you got to short out the Buffalo. You just call him Chuck Buffalo. Matt, the Lone Wolf, Landon Quinones making his UFC debut, taking this one on short notice, accepting a fight against Nasrat Haqparast. When Nasrat fights guys that are completely out of the periphery of the top 15, he can dust them. He can style on them. He might not knock them out. The last time that Nasrat Haqparast got a finish in the UFC, that was before the Thibaut Gouti fight. That was against Joaquim Silva. Louis Bond, rate the card. How much would Kai Kara-France have improved it? Well, Kai Kara-France was 5th ranked at flyweight. Manel Kape 10th ranked, so that would add a little bit. I'd say if Kai Kara-France, former interim title challenger.
It's a 5 out of 10 right now for me, but if Kai versus Manel was on it, it'd be like a 7. I think that'd be a really good fight.
3.5 out of 10 for me, and if Kai was on it, it's a 4 out of 10. It's one of the worst pay-per-view cards this year.
I think that'd be a phenomenal fight, though. Like, Manel Kape versus Kai Kara-France would be one of the best fights in the division, so I think it's worth more than half a point.
They'd be John, they'd be having a good time. When you do look at this one, Kicks Good saying is Quinones worth a flyer. Man, this guy, all of a sudden, you have Haqparast getting ready for Southpaw versus Orthodox. Now it's Southpaw versus Southpaw. You get Nasrat getting ready for a boxer. He gets Landon Quinones who can box. He moves his head. He throws really good kicks. His movement on the outside is good. And Quinones has very good wrestling training with Roger Crawl. So I was really hyped up when I saw that Quinones was in this fight, even though he wrestled himself into a triangle his last time out against Jason Knight. That loss doesn't count on his record. The only other loss that Quinones has is back in 2019, a split decision against a recent performance in the night winner, Muhammad Naimov, who was able to knock out Jamie Mullarkey. So I absolutely love this fight. I ever so slightly have Haqparast, but this should be a fun one.
I like Quinones a lot moving forward, but I won't say ever so slightly with me having Haqparast. I do favor him in the matchup just for his wealth of experience, and I know he hasn't always beat the next level guys, but even look at Dan Hooker, for instance. Like, Dan Hooker had to wrestle Nasrat Haqparast to beat him in that fight. Yes, he was doing well on the feet, but things would get uncomfortable for him in the striking, and then shoot for takedowns on Haqparast, and I don't think Quinones coming into the UFC is going to be at that level of striking. I know it's very different kinds. Hooker's a guy who's going to get a lot more of his work done on the outside, whereas Quinones is a lot better with his boxing, an area that Haqparast himself excels in. I just think this is a matchup where I think it is going to be a little bit too much early on. He might learn a lot from this fight, and then I think he's going to go on and have a very successful career afterwards. Like what I saw in Quinones on the way up to the UFC, it is really promising. I like his ability to stand in the pocket. He has accurate shots. He has good hand speed. He has good variety in his shots. I just think it's going to be a little bit too difficult for him to stand in that pocket when you're fighting a guy like Nasrat Haqparast, who does do a good job of at least moving his feet. I don't love the fact that Nasrat hasn't made massive improvements during his UFC career. I talked about that a lot at the start of the week about how, hey, he's still that kind of boxer from the outside who's going to use his feet more than anything. It'd be nice if he ever did incorporate just a solid leg kick or some more long-range tools that he could have at his disposal. But I do still like his ability to use his feet to get from outside to inside.
And Haqparast is one of those guys where he's so good with his boxing. He mixes it to the body so well. He can either throw a jab or rip that left hook down there. And at the same time, good takedown defense. And that takes guys very high up. You look at a guy that's in this division that Haqparast couldn't beat in an awesome fight. Was Bobby Green. So listen,
that's like Nasrat Haqparast is like the foundation of a very good fighter. If he was able to build more upon himself, I think he could get into the rankings at some point. Still at this stage of his career, I just think unless he starts building some of those components on really soon, it might start to pass him by because he does do everything at least well.
We might get into a spot where it sounds like there's gravel trucks out in front of the window, but Matt, conditions are favorable for the development of dangerous thunderstorms that may be capable of producing damaging wind gusts and heavy rain. Matt, we'll see if there's wind gusts and heavy rain in this fight between Quinones
and weird weather
and Haqparast, but 88% of the fans going Nasrat Haqparast, climate change is real. And our next fight, Matt, is between Jamie Mullarkey and John Mcdessie. Matt, quite honestly, I don't give a rip about this fight. I enjoy a Jamie Mullarkey fight.
I feel the opposite. I'm excited.
I enjoy a Jamie Mullarkey fight for the simple fact that the guy gets hit a lot and he throws some pretty good offense. And when he mixes in takedowns, he tends to win some of his fights. But when you look at it for a guy like John Mcdessie, he's overcome major injuries. He comes into fights that he's more than likely supposed to lose, and he puts on a good account himself. Marches guys forward, mixes up to all three levels, makes it a little bit fun. But when you look at a guy like John Mcdessie in this one, training at a fight ready, I mean, listen, they got a few big fighters coming up in the next couple weeks. Tracy Cortez is back. She hasn't fought in ages. But for John Mcdessie, he could make this an interesting test against John Mcdessie because Jamie Mullarkey, I mean, he even got dropped by Michael Johnson, a guy who doesn't drop a lot of people. So when you do consider a fight like this, MMA Millionaire pick of the night, what is a pick of the night? Mullarkey puts him to sleep. Pick of the night, he says. Matt, for me, I do like Jamie Mullarkey in this one, but he got knocked out a few months ago.
To put it into wrestling terms, it's weird seeing the enhancement talent face each other, right? Because a lot of prospects do end up fighting either Jamie Mullarkey or John Mcdessie on their way up the rankings. And it's sort of those kind of prove-it-to-me fights, right? Is, hey, these are the durable veterans, they're pretty well-rounded, and if you're able to get past them, then they'll probably have a solid career in the UFC. So I think this is a fun fight because they are matching these two guys up together, and they do have, I'll say, complementing fight styles. We should have a fun fight out of this. I do think Mcdessie's going to be able to land some clean shots, and he's not the most heavy-handed fighter in the world, so I don't think Mullarkey's just going to go down after one. And if they do start to stand in the pocket, Jamie Mullarkey doesn't look like he hits very hard, but for some reason he does. And it might look like a weird stiff shot that just sort of braces his opponent.
And the funny part is,
but they land pretty heavy.
From distance and in tight. Now, he does get hit in close.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Defensively, none of that changes just because he does have good power himself. But that's where I think he's going to have success over Mcdessie. Mcdessie does do a really good job up close defensively when he's moving his head. But if Mullarkey can make it ugly, start using some of that dirty boxing with his own clinch, I think he can have success in this matchup, and that's why I have him.
And again, I mean, Mcdessie, the last time that he was able to drop an opponent was back in 2017. That's included in the 5-on-in. He took on Abel Trujillo, dropped him in a decision win for John Mcdessie. Yeah, he got dropped his last time out against Nasrat Haqparast, but that was over a year ago. And for Mullarkey, he got knocked out not that long ago. So 89% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Jamie Mullarkey to get the win. But yeah, we'll see how this one goes. They're wild like the Tapology voters. Matt, the next matchup, people have this pegged as a possible fight of the night in our YouTube community tab. You have some big fighters. We got to get those likes up there as we roll along. When you do consider a matchup like this, Matt, Jose Mariscal showed up to show out on about a week's notice. He was taking on Trevor Peek. The fans like Trevor Peek. And it just felt dirty seeing Chepe out there at like a -150. Like that guy, unless Trevor Peek could offensively wrestle all of a sudden, Mariscal, you thought he was going to be able to just skate circles around him a little bit. And like a Kirill Kaprizov, Jose Mariscal was able to do that. So for me in this matchup, I mean, Mariscal back down to 145. I think that's a good thing for him. He trains at elevation with some of the best in the world. And you consider it, the boxing's good. His kicks are really good. I think that's probably the most underrated part of his game. And offensively, his wrestling's good, but defensively, it's not the greatest. And I just have this problem where sometimes fights, we just keep them in our brain a little bit like they're too far ahead. They're tip of the tongue, top of the brain. And I always think of that Sean Soriano fight that Chepe Mariscal had where he struggled so much in the takedowns. It's like, hey, guy gets knocked out in his first UFC fight and that stays with you the whole UFC tenure and you can never get rid of it. Well, that fight for me on the regional scene is Jose Mariscal a little bit. And I probably shouldn't be like that, but when I look at a guy like Jack Jenkins who's broken multiple leg bones with leg kicks, to be able to offensively wrestle well, defensively shells up well with the boxing, and he likes to work the body quite a bit. I like Jack Jenkins in the matchup.
I'm going to be really interested to see who decides to start wrestling, though, because I do think both guys can have success with their own offensive wrestling. We've seen it from Jenkins. I know him and Emmers had that really close fight where a lot of people even think Emmers won, but he did do a great job, not only with the leg kicks, but even defensively with his own wrestling. He does do a good job. So I think if he's able to tire out Mariscal and just stay steady throughout the fight, don't allow Chepe to have these big peaks and valleys, don't allow him to really set off with some of those long-range attacks. I think if Jenkins can just be a steady fighter in his face, use the leg kicks, disguise his boxing as his takedown attempts as well, I think he can have a lot of success. So I have Jenkins in the matchup, but this is a bigger fight than I think a lot of people would assume. This is a massive win on either guy's resume, whoever's able to get it.
77% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Jack Jenkins to get the win. Freitas is saying Mariscal trains with Gaethje. That'll help him with the leg kicks. We'll see if that plays out that way. But Matt, we will move forward, both of us, with Jenkins in the matchup. Matt, the last fight on the prelims. Carlos Ulberg taking on Dawoon Jung. Jung, you lose 2 fights in a row. You're chopped liver. You're the worst fighter in the UFC. You're taking on a dynamo all of a sudden, Carlos Ulberg. He's won 4 fights in a row. He's looked good winning them, and he looked good in the first round of his fight against Kenny Nzechukwu, but he didn't in the second. So we'll see how this one plays out. I would think Jung's going to go out there, try and wear on Ulberg, try and wrestle him, try and just put that Blagoy-Ivanov game plan into effect. And we'll use that till the end of time. Snap down City, tire the arms out, and there we go. So when you do look at a fight like this...
If you're about to fight Carlos Ulberg and your coach is telling you, though, like, work the 1-2 and stay at range, I'd fire that coach immediately.
Wow, I mean, do you think the coach is going to be like Pat Barry? Forget about the finger!
Well, just... If you're fighting Carlos Ulberg, the last thing you want to do is stand at range and let him get his combinations involved. Because yes, he's a big guy, he's heavily muscled, he throws very hard, but his ability to strike in combination is really impressive, and he does do a really good job of mixing in not only the body shots with the hands, he'll throw knees, he'll throw kicks along with his kickboxing combinations, and those are really going to be key to keep Jung off of him for the majority of the fight. Because if Dawoon Jung is able to just move forward, use some of those clinch exchanges like you say, to at least take a little bit of the pop off of Ulberg's shots away, then he's going to make it a much more competitive fight as it does go down the stretch. But the one thing about Ulberg that I do think he isn't getting enough credit for is the fact that he might not be making massive improvements across his skill set, right? As to, oh, he's shooting double legs and stuff. But I do think he is tapering his kickboxing skill set more to MMA and transferring himself over a little bit more. I just think the confidence is there to where he's not leaving the openings that he would have otherwise with some of his takedown defense and even the striking defense as well. So I do like Ulberg in this matchup. I think he's a whole hell of a lot faster than Jung, and I think that's the big difference maker between the two.
These people that are making fun of somebody by saying, like, Jung is a dark horse of the division, ha 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 ha, he's not. Well, if you remember, not that long ago, he's 15-2-1. He had taken down William Knight on 8 of 9 attempts before William Knight just... Everybody sold their stock on that guy. No, but when you do consider a fight like this, like MMA Millionaire, Ulberg is the safest, best on this card IMO. I don't think so at all. So for me, I'm going to go with Carlos Ulberg. Again, I think the kicks, maybe he's able to kink his neck and throw a kick up high, black jag. But yeah, again, a large percentage, 94% at Fight Night Picks going with Ulberg. I wouldn't be surprised if Jung was able to go out there, though, utilize some of that wrestling out of Korean.
I'd be a little surprised.
Why? Against a kickboxer?
A guy who's lost 2 straight fights is fighting somebody who's won 4 straight and looked phenomenal in them. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that would be an upset.
Hold on. Yeah, Carlos Ulberg isn't fighting the best fighters in the world. He fought Nick.
That's why he's fighting Dawoon Jung.
He fought Nick from Romania.
No, but my whole point is, you just proved my point for me. He's not fighting the best fighters in the world. He's fighting Dawoon Jung.
He hadn't fought.
He still isn't. Up until tomorrow, he will not have fought the best fighters in the world, even though he has a fight today.
Fabio Sharon. All right, Matt, we'll move into the main card. I have no interest in this fight whatsoever. I broke it down at the start of the week.
Pedro.
You didn't at the start of the week.
I know. I just think he's more well-rounded to go out there and get the win. And I know I've been critical of Tyson Pedro, but again, if he is able to keep this at range for any period of time, he does have decent shots going down the middle. I don't like his speed nor his ability to pull his hands back almost like a recoil. He will get caught sometimes when fighters are moving forward on him. But again, this is the only time I'm switching. I do have Tyson Pedro in this one. Again, I just think, other than the grappling and the wrestling between the two, which very well could be an even draw, I do think he's going to be able to do a good enough job defensively off his back to not get caught in any very compromising positions, at least for round after round. And I think on the feet, his steadiness is going to be able to get the win.
69% of the fans have Tyson Pedro to get the win. No way do I think he wins this fight. I think Anton Turkalj is one of those guys, he starts off and closes the range like, it probably isn't one of those things where your coach goes, hey, throw that flying sidekick like you're Fabrizio Verdum. But Anton Turkalj does things like that at the very start of the first round. to close the distance to then get into his takedown. And if that strike doesn't land, then he tries to get it down to the mat. MMA Millionaire, I mean, I thought you did this. Has Turk even won in the UFC?
You're just being
no,
weird, Craig.
He's 0-2, but for me, I do have Anton Turkalj in this one. I think the wrestling is better. I think that the cardio and conditioning overall is going to show out for Turkalj in the fight. And so for me, I do have him to win. But again, 69% of the fans going with Tyson Pedro in this matchup.
It's a weird fight, though, because what does the winner really gain? You know, you're going to fight somebody else outside the top 15 at 205. Like
Woon Jung.
Wow. Coming off of his third loss in a row?
I don't know, Matt. Justin Tafa taking on Austin Lane. This is our top viewed individual video for the week, and this is one of the most popular videos on this card.
Hey, Craig, if you don't know, now you know. Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane.
No, hold on. You make that joke, honest to goodness.
I know. This was the fight for if you don't know, now you know.
This was the if you don't know, now you know fight for the last time these guys fought. And the last time they fought was in Jacksonville, and it lasted 29 seconds. Austin Lane landed 3 strikes. 2 of them were body kicks, and then he put his finger in Justin Tafa's eye. And then Dan Margliotta was a saint. He gave Tafa all the time in the world. The doctor that looked like Bob Odenkirk came in, and he said, no, well, he told me he can't see. He can't see. So the fight was over. So for me, I like Austin Lane in this fight. I think the strikes on the outside, the kicks, they're going to be able to show out for him. Hopefully he doesn't do the bob and weave with the head sticking all the way back like he's Luke Rockhold. But I do like Lane in this fight. But yeah, low-level heavyweight fights on the main card. In Australia, from a guy who was born in New Zealand and represents Brisbane, you think they want that guy to win? Probably. Probably, right?
I would think so. I have Justin Tafa in the fight. Don't feel good about it, of course. But if he is able to get the fight on the inside, use some of his boxing combinations, kind of get that forehead on chest style, I think he can have success against Lane because Lane does do a good job from the outside. I know he's a little bit older for a heavyweight, so he doesn't have a lot of time to progress, but he is a very good athlete, and he does do a good job of at least moving his feet and bouncing around. But he is a little bit loose with some of those boxing combinations, so if he's not able to hurt Tafa, or at least get his respect in that long distance, I think he's going to have a little bit of trouble up close with a guy like Tafa. So the winner of this is probably going to fight Parker Porter, but I've got Justin Tafa.
Well, no, they wouldn't make Justin Tafa.
Well, he's not fighting his brother. That's what I mean, you know?
Yeah.
So who else is he going to fight who's outside the top 15 in the heavyweight?
Tovan, hanging out in the chat. One of the best out there to follow in MMA. Tafa's 29. Yeah. I thought that man was like 48. Yeah, you'd think.
Unranked heavyweights, ladies and gentlemen.
We're split on the pick. Then we get into Manel Kape taking on Felipe Dos Santos. And this is one of those dark horse fights for a possible fight of the night. We know how good Manel Kape is. I mean, rematching with Kai Asakura, getting that Ryzen belt when he was over there, beating, you know, fighters from yesteryear over with the promotion as well. But since he's been in the UFC, with the exception of his tentative 2 first fights, he's gone scorched earth. And this is a guy that, it's funny. Like, you look at that press conference that the UFC had, and I didn't watch it, but I saw the clips that were out there on social media. And a lot of people were like, wow, I can't believe Manel Kape's this guy. Well, you must not follow him on social media because this guy's got BDE out the wazoo. And when you look at Anton Turkalj, people said the same thing. Like, this guy's a little bit different. Yeah, he's one of the more different. He picked the nickname the Pleasure Man. You don't get given the nickname Pleasure Man by dudes in the gym. Hey, pal. Pleasure Man. But when you look at a fight like this, Matt, Starboy switching the stances, body and head with his boxing. He's one of the speedier fighters that you're going to find. He tends not to get hit quite a bit. And when you look at Felipe Dos Santos, I mean, Lipe Detona, this guy, like, he flicks those kicks up there to the jaw with both feet out of the orthodox stance. He throws spinning stuff once, twice over like he's Matt Frivola or Merab Dvalishvili out of the same gym. But I really do like this fight. But I really do like Manel Kape in the spot.
It's hard to pick the guy making his debut against the other fighter who could be fighting for a title relatively soon. And that's no disrespect to Dos Santos at all. He's a really talented fighter. And I do think he has a lot of skills that are going to carry him far past this fight. Because this is another matchup where Dos Santos, I think, can be a really promising fighter in the near future, not even in the distant future. It's just a step too far to fight Manel Kape at this stage of your career. Because if he is trying to set up those kicks from long distance and use those to plod forward, he's going to walk into hooks from Manel Kape, and he's going to do it more often than you probably like. And Cobb does do a good job. We haven't seen the wrestling as much. Like, he will go for it, don't
he
get me
used
wrong.
to do it a lot more when he was over with Tyson,
Exactly.
for sure.
And it's definitely a part of his game that he can go to, but even if the wrestling is somewhat eliminated and he just primarily focuses on striking in this matchup, I think his striking is going to be good enough. I like his hooks, I like his power from both sides, and I think he's going to be able to do damaging enough offense against Dos Santos in the early goings of this fight. But Cobb has to do more than just win, right? This is almost like a football team being like a -11 by the time they're playing. Like, you can't just beat them. You've got to go out there and put on a really good performance, because Cobb does have himself involved in this like borderline storyline right now against Kai Kara France, who himself is in that top 5, top 10 category to where any win over another guy in that same spot can get you a title shot. So let's say Cobb goes out there and looks okay. He wins like a 29-28 decision, and Dana White afterwards is like, I don't think that kid won. Then that's not going to be great for him long term. But if he's able to go out there and get a finish, then you know what everyone's going to be talking about immediately after the fight.
Shlomo Schmilliams, you're a moron. Everybody's excited for this fight, so stick around for this. Manel Kape was an alternate for a title fight as soon as he entered the UFC. And at the same time, you go back and you watch his fights. His fight against Takeo Mitsugaki was the one where he was able to bring it down to the mat. If you look at his fight against Ian McCall, obviously unfortunate, bad luck Ian cutting himself on the rope. But when you look at a guy like Manel Kape, it's the speed and it's the technique. When you look at a guy like Lipe Detona, he's very long, he's very rangy, he throws with tons of power, his offensive wrestling is good, his jiu-jitsu is really good. These two guys are very, very good fighters. And if you're going to say that Manel Kape being 10th in this division is some type of travesty because recently he hasn't beaten good fighters, David Dvorak, I know after the Kape fight started to lose some luster. And then he loses to Steven Erceg, who's got a fight coming up, and he loses a little bit more luster. But let me remind you that Dvorak was the 10th ranked fighter when he fought Steven Erceg. Kape is ranked 10th right now, and this is Shark Tank of a division when you go up through the top 10. So for me, I do like Manel Kape in the fight, but I think Lipe Detona brings something fun with his striking. He's just a little bit too fast and loose with it for me, and that's why I won't pick him, but I think this is going to be a fun fight. And then, I mean, Shlomo Schmilliams, you're excited about it. Here's your co-main event guy. Tai Tuivasa, working on that conditioning. You get it? And he's coming in, 265.6. His last time out, 266. He's grown out the salad a little bit. We haven't heard as much about his beer. We haven't seen him hanging out with Tyson Pedro anymore. Those brothers-in-laws, they've split a little bit as far as their training's concerned. You do have the fighter representing City Kickboxing in Pedro. So, and listen, he shaved his head too. Like, wild looks there. But when you look at a fight like this, I know we're split on the picks overall on this fight, but this should be a good one here.
This is how I look at this fight. If Volkov can keep it at range, he wins without doubt in my mind. But the thing is, Tai Tuivasa does have a counter to that range of Alexander Volkov, and it is the leg kicks. And through those leg kicks, if he can just inch his way closer and closer to Alexander Volkov, I'm not saying it automatically guarantees him a knockout win, but it puts his probability a lot higher every inch he does get closer to Alexander Volkov. So to me, that's what this fight really comes down to. Can he just get close and give himself more opportunities to go out there and get the win? Because yes, at distance, Volkov does a great job with his knees up the middle. I think those are going to keep Tai off of him for long periods of time. He does a good job offensively too with his own elbows if he's able to get the tie clinch going. But Tai Tuivasa himself has great tie clinch. He's really good offensively up close, so that might help him. And at distance, I do think the leg kicks are going to come into play. So for those reasons, I like Tai Tuivasa in this matchup. I just think if you look at anybody in the top 15 stylistically, Volkov gives him the most opportunities to win because he does require a lot of that range to have his own success. And if Tai's able to eliminate that range, I think he can go out there and get the win.
59% of the fans going Tuivasa to get the win.
Really?
I don't think he gets the win. Again, I know you want to see those hometown guys get it done, but when you look at a fight like this, the folks over there in the chat kind of back and forth. McLean Dancy saying, Tai, I didn't hear no bell spits blood. We'll see if that happens. Kevin T saying the value is on Tai. Tuivasa going out there, working the boxing, working the forward pressure. When he's rolling and he's moving forward, he has a ton of success. But just like a guy who was able to beat him, who fought on the card last weekend, it's a little bit like Sergey Spivak. And what do I mean? Well, Spivak's got to move forward with his striking to initiate his takedowns to then beat the tar out of his opponents. He was able to do that against, pick any of them. Oleinik, Derek Lewis, you get the drill. When you look at a guy like Tuivasa, he needs to be rolling with the forward pressure. Or if he gets backed up, he's not really able to initiate much of what he's good at. So when I look at a guy like Volkov, whether it be, and I see it right there, Kadu 34 making my point, Volkov, teep kick going to be key. Volkov with his teep kicks. Volkov's got really good conditioning. Now, does that come into play in a 3-round fight? Not as much. But when you do look at a fight like this, I either see it early for Tai Tuivasa or in all the 3 rounds for a guy like Volkov. So for me, I do like Volkov in this. But again, at Fight Night Picks, 59% of the fans going Tuivasa, and you found that pretty interesting, eh?
I did, because Tai Tuivasa is over a 2-1 underdog in this fight, so I'm surprised so many people are picking him, because the odds makers don't favor Tai at all in this one. I just think, again, if you look at the fact that Volkov leaves his head very high up, he's not the fastest striker in the world, even though he throws a lot of strikes at you. I just think it does leave some openings for Tai to go in there and look really impressive, and this might be one of those wins where it almost does a disservice to Tai Tuivasa. Let's say he goes in there and knocks out Volkov in the first round, gets a crazy performance bonus win. Then what are they going to do? Just keep on feeding him to absolute killers on the way up the division, fight after fight?
Yeah, you know he's going to fight unless the guy's hooked in a fight. Jailton Almeida is what I was going to say.
That would be awful for Tai Tuivasa. So I just think if he gets the win, they're probably going to put him back on, hopefully, that kind of fight of the night category of fights.
Tai, you're fighting Jailton. What are we going to work on in class, coach?
Flying knees.
Marge Simpson uppercuts. That's all you're throwing. Just try and fist on face. Yeah.
The same thing has to be said for Volkov, though. If he fought Jailton Almeida, that would be a bad night in the office.
GSP and Moose are the only good things about Canada. Adeptus,
Moose are good. Moose are the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life if you've ever seen a wild moose, so they're not that good.
You're an absolute turkey. 74% of the fans going with Adesanya to get the win. I mean, we know Sean Strickland. He's the Tobias Harilla of 185 pounds.
Tobias Harris.
Walks guys forward. He throws a lot of volume. The volume can win out. And sometimes he pops power shots into the volume and he's able to beat Brendan Allen, the king of the Apex. Brendan Allen, throwing that out there on Twitter. Cool stuff, man. You get to fight in front of nobody and people aren't watching your fights. But when you look at this one, Matt, for Sean Strickland, another main event. For Israel Adesanya, 10th main event in a row. Steppen Park hitting up the super chat.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Happy fight day, fellas. I think that the worst of the storm is past us.
Could hear it for a minute, yeah.
Haven't been hearing it for a bit. But, Matt, when we're looking at this one, I mean, for me, I like the footwork out of Adesanya. I like the kicks out of Adesanya. And it very well could go a lot like the Paulo Costa fight.
This is what I struggle with in the matchup. If Sean Strickland, if you sat him down and said, okay, how do you envision this fight going for you to go out there and have the most dominant win possible?
I don't know, man.
It's probably stand at range, try to implement his own striking, and maybe go for a little bit of grappling just to switch it up on Adesanya and make him question his game plan. If you stand at range with Israel Adesanya, there's enough evidence now to tell you what happens. Like, unless you're Robert Whittaker, and even he can't really withstand it either. He got dropped in their matchups. It's really difficult to go out there and try to have success against this guy for extended periods of time. You might be able to have a flurry here or there, get him up against the cage and land a big shot. But even when we talked about the Paulo Costa matchup, it was, hey, Paulo can land that one shot that ends the fight. Sean Strickland, for being as good of a striker as he is, doesn't really have that one-shot knockout power. So I just think it's going to be really difficult for him to go in there and win some kind of a decision, right? Because if he is just relying on the volume on the outside, he's going to eat a lot of leg kicks. He's just going to eat a lot of kicks in general, I think. So unless he's able to make the fight really exciting, maybe get into Adesanya's head and make him think, hey, I've got to get into like a fight of the night style brawl, maybe he can have success. I think it's really difficult for Sean Strickland to have a very similar game plan and skill set to Adesanya, but Adesanya having his striking turned up so many more notches.
Branch above, I know you're a fan of the show. You've been here for a long time. But, buddy, what do you make of, like, Jared Saltalamaki and catchers that paint their fingernails? You got to be able to see those signs coming down, especially PitchCom doesn't work anymore. Again, 74% of the fans going with Adesanya to get the win. And for Sean Strickland, I mean, we'll see how it goes. He can go back with a win and fight guys in sparring,
but this
like
is the weird
just
thing.
Random guys.
I think Sean Strickland deserves this title shot, oddly enough. Like, I know Dricus Du Plessis was supposed to get it, but Sean Strickland's fought everybody the UFC has put in front of him for like 3 years now, to his credit. He's done it on short notice, he's done it up weight classes. Like, he really has been the kind of, he's the new Anthony Smith, right? Oh, we need a 5-round main event fight night. Who are we going to throw in there? Sean Strickland is going to pick up that phone and he's going to fight for 5 rounds in a world where, hey, we don't have a lot of MMA fighters who still do that anymore, which is probably better for their long-term career. But still, it has been nice to see Strickland go in there and be the guy who's willing to step up on so many occasions. So I'm happy to see him get this opportunity, even though I do think it's going to be a difficult one.
But does Dana White want Dricus Du Plessis to take on the winner? Will that happen?
Well, it depends on who wins. If him and Sean Strickland fought each other, it would just be a weird fight. You'd be like, oh, there's no build up here. Adesanya and Duplessis at least have some heat behind them, so that would be a much more interesting matchup. But Adesanya is slowly reaching the point now to where he's fought everybody and defended the title against most people at the top of 185, and he's cleaned out a lot of the division, avoiding some of the rematches, so I'll be curious to see who they do try to match him up with next. If it's not Duplessis, because what's he gonna do? Fight Jared Cannonier again?
Fight Brad Tavares again. That's what we want.
What a fight.
Matt, all right, we will move. Eric wants, who's Sean Strickland NBA comparison? Who's a big-time volume shooter?
He's Rudy Gay. He's a guy who has good numbers if you just look at them on a piece of paper, but the numbers don't tell the story. Rudy Gay didn't win you a lot of games. He just had really good numbers. And Strickland, I think, has great numbers, but his resume isn't the strongest in the division, so I think Rudy Gay's a fun comp.
We'll see how that one goes. All right, Matt. As you know, with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, you toss a like. We appreciate it, and every time and every week we go back through the card one more time before the fights. The fights start in, what is it, an hour and 15 minutes. That's when the fights actually start. I might have that one wrong. An hour and 45 minutes, because we started 2.5 hours earlier than the fight. So, Matt, we will have a look at the kick-em-off type of fight. We have Kevin Jousset out of City Kickboxing taking on Kiefer Crosbie. I could see Kiefer Crosby winning this one very easily. I do have Kevin Jousset, but this is an interesting fight for both these guys' UFC debuts.
I've got Jousset as well. Should be a fun fight in the debut, or in the opener.
Chris Cruz, Craig, if Izzy loses, you have to paint your nails. If you're going to waste any time thinking about that, I mean, nobody wins. Matt, Shane Young taking on Gabriel Miranda. I do have Shane Young, but he missed weight big time. Big time.
What if it's the ultimate play, though? Like, I just won't cut weight this time. I've got Shane Young. Hate all of the red flags surrounding him and the weight cut, the very unsuccessful one. But I do have Shane Young in the fight.
All right, Matt, we move into the next matchup. Mike Mathitha's taking on Chuck Buffalo. Give me that Buffalo.
Like, I'm just thinking about that part in Guardians of the Galaxy where he's like, what's your name? And he's like, Star-Lord. But he's like, what? Poor Mike. I've got not Blood Diamond in this one. I've got Chuck Buffalo in the matchup.
Oh, buffs. Matt, big time matchup. We have Nasrat Haqparast taking on Landon Quinones. This is a fun fight. I do have Haqparast to get the win. I have a hard time seeing Quinones winning this one in his UFC debut. Wouldn't be a surprise, though, because, again, I think this guy is a really good prospect, and I think you're going to see him around for longer than the 1, 2, 3 fights.
And I agree 100%. I still favor Nasrat in the matchup, though. He's just really been there and done that in the lightweight division, and I know he's been outside the rankings for the majority of his career, basically all of it, but he is a talented fighter, and you could see him being one of those guys who, if one day he put it all together and went on a bit of a run, you wouldn't be surprised about it at all, so I do have Haqparast in this one.
Oh, I can't stand guys who paint their fingernails. Imagine wasting,
You're wasting a lot of time acknowledging it. Who cares?
Processes on that. Jamie Mullarkey's taking on John Mcdessie. Jamie Mullarkey got knocked out not that long ago, but gosh darn it, I'm picking him to win this fight.
It's a weird matchup because, again, these are two wily veterans who normally you match them up with prospects on the rise, so hopefully it results in a really fun fight. Both guys do have a good gas tank, so I don't think it's a fight that's just going to fall off the deep end in the third round. Hopefully they will be able to keep it up, but I do have Mullarkey. I still think he's got a little bit more gas left in the tank.
All right, we've got Jenkins taking on Chepe Mariscal, and I have Jenkins in the fight.
I've also got Jenkins, but this, I agree with our fans, could definitely be a fight of the night.
All right, Matt, we go into another big fight. Ulberg taking on Dawoon Jung. Going with Ulberg.
I like Carlos Ulberg in the matchup.
All right, Matt. We move into the next matchup, and it is Pedro taking on Turkali. Again, why are you taking Tyson Pedro?
I just think he's the steadier fighter in most aspects of his game. I worry about him defensively with his wrestling. We saw Saperbek Safarov get in on those hips at one point. Probably not a name you thought you'd hear today. But he did a good job defensively. He does do a good job trying to defend takedowns with his own submissions. And I think at range, he still has some tools with his down-the-middle strikes to go out there and get the win.
All right, so you're going with Pedro. I've got Turkali. Taffa's taking on Lane. Give me Austin Lane.
I got Taffa, but there's no confidence in this one at all.
Like, imagine somebody coming up to you and you're walking down the street. You're downtown. Let's say you're downtown. And maybe you're going to go pick up, because you're a downtown person, an Americano. Or maybe you're looking for a craft beer. Or you're looking to play hacky sack with the buds. And
it's
somebody
not
said,
1993,
hey,
Craig, but
how much money you got in your pocket? And you go, well, I carry cards. I got tap, but...
That guy's probably going to mug you, so I'd
no. They're nice people. It's
how
a
much
nice
money
downtown.
you got? Tell me.
It's a nice downtown. And they're like, hey, you got $80? And you're like, yeah. And then they go, well, do you want to spend that to watch Tyson Pedro fight Turkali and Justin Taffa fight Austin Lane? Because that's really happening today. Give me Austin Lane, but this is just the worst pay-per-view. Manel Kape's taking on a UFC newcomer on incredibly short notice. A guy who couldn't get a fight on Contender Series because his opponent missed weight. And now he's going to fight a top 10 opponent. And I've got Manel Kape.
I've also got Manel Kape.
All right, Matt. Ha ha ha. You suck, bro? Yeah. Whoever predicts wrong in the Pedro fight has to eat a spicy chip. But what if you regularly eat spicy chips? Matt, Tai Tuivasa is taking on Alexander Volkov, and I have Volkov.
I like Tuivasa in the matchup. He's too big of an underdog, and it makes no sense to me at all.
All right, Matt. And then in the main event, we have Adesanya taking on Strickland. And I'm going to go with Israel Adesanya to close out the night at 2 a.m. Eastern, most likely.
I think stylistically, this is the hardest matchup in the top 15 for Sean Strickland. You're probably thinking, oh, wow, Matt, what an intelligent thing to say. The champion of the division is the hardest matchup for a lot of guys in it. But Strickland has, let's call it decent wrestling. Let's give him at least that, right? He's a decent wrestler, a decent grappler, and he has well above average striking and output. Well above average isn't going to get it done against Israel Adesanya on the outside. Adesanya at this stage of his career, I think, has more than proven his ability to go out there and defend takedowns against people of average takedown ability. Even go back to the Romero fight. That Yoel fight was one of the worst fights of all time. We rewatch it so you don't have to. But he was able to defend a few takedown attempts from one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen in the division. So I have a hard time thinking Sean Strickland's going to go out there and put the wrestling shoes on. So maybe Strickland can surprise me, but I've got Adesanya in this matchup.
We'll see what Chris Curtis is shouting out in the corner, but again, one of those big fights. McLean, Dancy saying, question mark kick perhaps? Well, we'll see if that one happens. A big time fight. And then next week, Matt, of course, we have
another title fight.
Another title fight. It is in a fight night, but it's Alexa Grasso taking on Valentina Shevchenko, UFC Noche on Mexican Independence Day. Some fights have been dropped and added, new opponents found for some of these. I know I already did the graphics, but dropped a couple frames there. But Josephine Knudsen has a new opponent. It's going to be Marnik Mann in a fight that you're going to forget about in 5 minutes after I told you that. And the return of the Executioner, Alexander Reyes, and he has a new opponent on this card as well. He was supposed to take on Natan Levy. That fight fell out, so make sure you check those out as soon as they are available. You toss a like as this one goes along. We roll forward into that title fight next week, and we look forward to a busy end to 2023. You are going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.